And welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. Whew. After a very short break, we already have our players ready for our next series for our PvZ Trigger versus Serral. Again, Serral, he's on the top of the group. Trigger is at the bottom, which is a shame, but this is the group of death. Exclamation mark B in the chat if you guys want to have a link to the bracket, to the Wikipedia page where you can see the group yourself. It's very stacked, very intense, and yeah, Trigger, he's had a rough start here. He's had a rough performance so far. He hasn't been able to take a single series, and it doesn't get easier. He's up against arguably the best player in the world. He's up against Serral. Oh boy, so it's going to be quite an uphill battle, but I want to believe that he can take it to him. And here we go. Here is the favorite player. Here is the #1 place player in the entire group, representing Team Basilisk, the Finnish Zerg. It is Serral. And spawning in the top right-hand corner of Altitude, we have his opponent. We have the Canadian Protoss representing Team Basilisk. It is Trigger. Again, Trigger, he isn't a bad player by any means. He's amazing, he's beautiful, he has really good performances, especially in these online events. But here, these past couple of days, it's been a bit of a rough showing, and I don't blame him. Again, he's up against the best players in the world. You know, he's up against Maru, Serral, Showtime, MaxPax, Gumiho. It's a rough draw here for Trigger. But he still has a couple more matches tonight, and I want to believe, I hope at least, that he's able to bring it back here and have a performance that he can be proud of. As he is up against Serral for now, and later on in the evening, he's going to be going up against Showtime as well in a PvP. Meanwhile, on the other side of things, Serral, he's been breezing his way through. Serral, he, not mistaken, let me just double check. He hasn't dropped a single map so far. Serral, he 2-0'd Showtime, he 2-0'd Maru, he 2-0'd MaxPax, and Serral is looking for a flawless victory. He's looking for a clean run out of the group stage. Can he do it, or can he be stopped? As we even have an ESL Masters Summer rematch, a finals rematch later on in the evening, Serral still has to go up against Gumiho. And Gumiho, he's definitely capable of taking games. So looking forward to it. But before we get too ahead of ourselves, we have our PvZ before us, and we are on Altitude, the largest map in the map pool. Can be very late game oriented. See if Trigger does head in that direction. I bring this up quite often here when casting Trigger, but specifically in the PvZ matchup, Trigger, he typically doesn't really deviate too much from standard play. I can't remember the last time I've seen Trigger go for a Twilight Council opener, for example, to go into DTs, or, you know, Glaive Adepts, or a Disruptor Drop opener. He's really not one to really mix things up too much in this matchup specifically, I should say. Unlike his compatriots, Estrella from the NA region, Estrella, he's a little more experimental, a lot more willing to mix things up. Trigger, less so. And to be fair, his standard play isn't bad. His first Adept does make its way across the map. He's going to get 2 of those Lings. Oh, looking for a drone as well, but doesn't quite find one. As the Adept is forced back, and ooh, interesting. Trigger going for a Stargate opener, not for an Oracle first, but for a Void Ray instead. Now, this doesn't have to mean it's Sky Toss. It doesn't have to mean double Stargate Void Ray, but it could mean that, and that's all that really matters here. The Void Ray is designed to shut down these Overlords and to keep Serral in the dark, to keep him guessing as to what exactly Trigger is doing, whether he throws down a second Stargate or goes back into Oracle production. Both are options. And we have our answer. Void Ray comes out, hunts down the Overlord, and it is going to be an Oracle behind this. So we're not going for mass Void Ray production. We're not rushing into Sky Toss. We're not going double Stargate Phoenix like we saw from MaxPax earlier. We're going to be calming down here with an Oracle instead. And Serral should be preparing for this. We have 3 Queens here at the third. We have a Spore on the way in the main. We have 2 Queens here at the natural. Even though he hasn't spotted the Oracle, he is ready for one. Meanwhile, the Adepts are being active on the map, but they're being hunted down by these Lings. A big catch here from Serral. Shutting down a lot of the aggression here of Trigger, as he is going to be transitioning. We have the Forge on the way. We should be seeing the Twilight Council momentarily as well, as the Oracle gets across the map, but doesn't get any kills. Does get swatted away by those Queens. And we have a second Oracle in production. And, ooh, interesting. Okay, so Trigger, he delays his Twilight Council. He goes for a Forge first, or so I should say a Forge after the Stargate, into a Robo. So with this, he's going to have delayed charge, he's going to have delayed blink. It means that Trigger isn't going to be as active on the map, and he's more concerned with really teching up and building up his forces. This is very similar to how Showtime plays. Showtime, he also intentionally delays his tech here in favor of more Immortals, more Archons, a more stable 3-base and eventually 4-base economy. Again, a little more defensive, a little more macro-oriented, and it seems to be the case that Trigger is also going for that. With this Twilight Council, he could even delay his upgrades even further, and yep, there we go. Robotics Bay on the way. Once the Twilight Council finishes, we can go straight into a Templar Archives as well. Again, Trigger being very tech-heavy here. It means that he's going to be lacking in army. Trigger, he doesn't really have a standing army. He's got 2 Oracles and like a handful of Gateway units, and that's it. He doesn't really intend to push out. And I love this choice here from Serral. It looks like he is correctly identifying how passive Trigger is. He keeps checking, trying to see and get a read on the army, on the units. He's going to come across the 4th base, and that's also a massive tell. And Serral, because he's being left alone, we can get away with the Spire. That's the danger here, is that Trigger, he may be taking up a lot. He may be, cutting a bunch of corners, and, he's rushing into Colossus, for example. But he's also leaving the Zerg player alone. Serral hasn't had to worry about anything. The Oracles are now moving out, but they haven't really done too much damage. The Queens are in position. Serral has been free to just drone and just drone up and tech up as well. Meanwhile, this Ling run by, forcing all the Oracles back home. A big wrench in the works here for Trigger, as he has to pull everything back. Overseer gets a full scout, confirms everything in the main, the lack of gateways. And Serral gets away with the mutas. The Spire was not scouted. There's that Templar Archives again. We still don't have a gateway explosion. Trigger still only working off of 4 gates. And there are a couple of different ways to kind of abuse this. There are players like Dark who, as soon as they see that you're going for this kind of style, they just rush into a hive. They go for an infestation pit, they go for a hive, they go into ultras, into vipers, and they just out-tech you, out-greed you. Serral, he's going for a different approach, just going mass muta instead, and this can also be pretty effective. A little bit more risky because, it's not as kind of late game oriented. It doesn't have as many later steps. This has to snowball here and now, and there's nothing here. There's no cannons, no shield batteries. The mutas come in and they're gonna get damage done. Oh boy. A lot of probes already gonna be going down. Blink isn't even done. We do have an overcharge. We have at least 1 Void Ray. 5 probes are gonna be going down as Serral takes control of the main. Now, Blink is going to finish up in 5 seconds, but we don't even have that many Stalkers. Again, we only had 4 gateways. So even with Blink, there just isn't enough to keep up with the mutas. As they are not done, they get 12 probes. They head towards the 3rd base. They're going to get another 14, 15 plus. As they head towards the 4th as well. They take down the Phoenix. A couple of mutas are going to get shaved off, but 15 workers go down. A massive Link counterattack here at the natural. And can the Lings bust in? Oh! It looks like they barely will not. Oh, they don't need to. As Serral attempts to dance with these Stalkers instead. Takes down a Void Ray. Serral is bleeding out a lot of these mutas, but he has the economy to sustain it. He has 85 workers already. Stargate is depowered. Phoenix goes down. And the mass muta is just getting out of control. At the same time, a massive Link counterattack is coming in as well. And Trigger has to go for the base trade. He has to go for a big counterattack. It's his only option, as he's losing his entire main. Not the first base trade of the night. We saw this a lot in Gumiho versus Showtime. And Serral, he sees it coming ahead of time. He's getting ready for it. Goes for a big surround, shuts down, catches one of the Colossus. GG gets called, and Serral will take game number 1. GG. Oh, a very powerful game there out of Serral. As, we are going to be heading over to the European server. I did forget about this, but because Trigger does live in Canada, we do actually alternate back and forth. Game 1 on NA, Game 2 on EU, and we go back and forth. So that is where we are headed. But so we are gonna need a moment to set that up. But yeah, really powerful performance there out of Serral. A big reason as to why he was able to get away with the mass muta. I mentioned when we were talking about it. Likewise, Trigger was being really greedy himself. Again, only 4 gateways, went up to 4 bases, was taking up, throwing down everything he could. Templar Archives, Robotics Bay, Colossus Production, getting into Archons. He was just taking up so greedily. And yeah, in the end, he didn't quite get away with it. A lot of the power of what Trigger was doing is if the Zerg player isn't able to identify it, right? If they maybe stick on Roach, Ravager, Lingbane a little bit too long, if that does occur, which does happen, then the Zerg player falls behind. You know, they fall behind if they were a little bit too aggressive, trying to punish the third, trying to punish the fourth base with a, you know, mid-game army composition. Then the Protoss just have to focus on defending, and they're able to get ahead in that way. And that's where players like Showtime find a lot of success. But yeah, Serral accurately abusing that, punishing that, and taking game 1. GG. GG, well played. And yeah, with that, Trigger is going to have to try to bring it back here and now in game number 2. Now, what we saw on Altitude, we're not going to see on Dragon Scales. It's not really too common to try to do that on smaller maps. It's typically reserved for Altitude, Neo-Humanity, maybe Ancient Cistern as well. Gressman, that's another good one. But when it comes to the smaller maps like Dragon Scales or Babylon or Royal Blood, it can be riskier to try to cut corners like that and rush into tech. So I'm sure Trigger is going to go for a different approach. Much different approach. So yeah, we need a moment because we're all up. Apparently, in the middle of that game, or in the middle of this series, there's an update on EU. There's an update on the European server. So all the casters as we're switching servers, we're all just downloading the update, and hopefully we don't get left behind. Smooch. I do know that, Kuro, you have faster internet than me, so I may take a while actually. Not like this. But I guess we can always cast from clean feed if we do get left behind. Feels bad, man. Feels bad. But at least Trigger is given a little bit of time here to kind of ruminate and go over that game. Try to come up with a game plan for game number 2 as well, on how he wants to approach Serral, what he wants to do. For game number 2 at least. As a reminder as well, we're nearing the halfway mark. This is series 4 out of 8 best of 3s. We're getting there. We are getting there. And I'm going to be a while, I'll be honest. So I think we're going to go on a very short break. You know what? The player cams will keep you busy. We're going to be going on a very short break. We may end up casting from the clean feed. We'll keep you guys updated. We'll see you soon. We'll see you soon. And we are back. We're getting ready to dive into game number 2. Unfortunately, I won't be a part of the game, but it's okay because Kura's in there and she can stream her clean feed so we can cast, so I can work off of that as we're getting ready for that second game. And hopefully with this patch as well, with this update, we won't have to continue to update the client as we switch between servers. It's been something that we've been having to deal with in between all these games, but hopefully that won't happen any longer. Can you stream to me, please? Okay. All good, all good. Beautiful, beautiful. As we are getting ready for our next game. Again, it is going to be on Dragon Scales. And I'm curious to see what Trigger has ready for us, what he has up his sleeve, as it looks like we're loading on in and spawning in the bottom right hand corner of Dragon Scales. We have the Canadian Protoss player representing Team Basilisk. It is Trigger. And spawning in the top left hand corner, we have his opponent. We have the Finnish Zerg player representing Team Basilisk as well, as they are teammates. It is Serral. As a reminder, this is the best of 3, and Serral is up 1-0 in this series as well. Ooh. Again, we had a pretty intense game 1, or pretty intense. Again, Serral, he did a great job at accurately identifying what Trigger was up to, and he was able to abuse that as well, abuse the passivity of Trigger, and on top of that, able to get away with an unscouted Spire. Meanwhile, Serral is the player mixing things up instead. He's going for a pull first. Very interesting play here from Serral. Something that I did not expect to come out from him. It wasn't like a 15 pull or anything like that. It was just straight up pull first. It is very safe in case there was a proxy, but Trigger isn't really one to proxy, so I wonder what the plan is here for Serral. I wonder how heavily he's going to commit here to this spawning pool, to these lings, as he's going pool, hatch, then gas. Now, it looks like he isn't banking up larva, so it looks like I don't think he's going to make 6 lings. He's going to work with far less instead. Yep, there we go. He was droning. He only makes 2 lings, so this does look like a safety pool first. It looks like Serral was concerned of maybe a cannon rush or a proxy. He was anticipating Trigger to be very aggressive, which is surprising to me. Like, maybe that happens in practice. They are teammates, and it's very possible that they do practice together. But yeah, I'm a little bit surprised that Serral is playing it out as safe as he is. It does mean that Serral's build is going to be a little bit less efficient, does delay his economy, but you know, he's going to have the peace of mind at least of these early lings and the early queen. So yeah, really interesting stuff here as the 2 lings do manage to slip into the main base. That's the also added advantage of going for a pool first. You have these early lings to work with, and so far Trigger does minimize his losses, doesn't lose a probe yet, but does force some lost mining time, and Serral does get eyes on the initial deck. He does get eyes on the Stargate that is in production. We'll be losing one of those things, but we'll see if he can survive and stick around long enough to maybe see the first unit. For now, it looks like, yeah, he's just getting the hell out of there. Trying to buy as much time as possible. Keep that adept busy. But it does eventually get shut down. And, ooh, Trigger is going for a Void Ray first once again. Interesting choice here from Trigger. Really something that yeah, I was really expecting. Basically, the previous game, now this is trying to hunt down Overlord to deny vision, to deny scouting. We saw that last game, this was just for that, and we transitioned into an Oracle and really tech-heavy style. This could go into double Stargate play, though, from Trigger here in game 2. It's possible. It's possible. I don't want to rule it out, but now we do. Now we do. As the Void Ray comes out, and we're just going for an Oracle afterwards. So again, just going to try to keep Serral in the dark, but Serral didn't even have an Overlord outside the natural, so far there's nothing that really can be hunted down. So far, Trigger hasn't gained too much value out of that Void Ray yet, as the Oracle is on the way behind this. We have Trigger just expanding, taking his third, on time, as to be expected. So this build is looking pretty normal, pretty standard so far, as he is looking for some damage, whether it's Overlords or Lings or maybe even a Queen. He does find one Queen, but he also finds 2 more, and yeah, that Void Ray is going to be zoned away. The Oracle is headed towards the natural base of Serral. Is there anything in position? Yeah, we have 3 Queens already ready for it. The Oracle does nothing, and Trigger is going for Sky Toss. There is the Fleet Beacon, and we should soon see a second Stargate as well. So I was bringing this up when we were casting Max Packs earlier. If you remember, Max Packs did go for double Stargate Phoenix production, and before he started making the Phoenix, I was going into a tangent about how Skytoss play has been becoming more popular over the past maybe 2 months. Rushing into carriers and rushing into a Fleet Beacon, it's kind of risen in popularity once again. So it's been really interesting to see everyone do this. Classic, Hero, Max Packs, and even Trigger. They've all been rushing into carriers every now and then. It's not every game, I don't want to say that, but once a series or once a tournament, these Protoss players have been bringing this out, and there's a lot of power behind this, especially if it goes unscouted. So we'll see if Serral can get a read on this, as we do have the carriers on the way. There is a big timing here where these carriers can do a lot of damage, especially if the Queen count is low. But if you look at the production tab, Serral, he is still producing nothing but Queens. It looks like he recognizes the danger or the threat of this, and he is just staying on top of that Queen production, making sure he has plenty of anti-air. So even when these first 2 carriers arrive, he's going to shut them down. And he's reading this so well, he goes straight into a Spire. A Spire is already on the way, and with said Spire, he can get into very fast Corruptors as well. Now, we'll see if Trigger commits to carriers. Now, what I mean by that, he's making 2. Yesterday, we were casting... Was it Showtime? We were casting another Protoss player yesterday, and they only made 2 carriers, and then they switched into Ground Toss. I think it was Classic on Ancient Cistern. I think it may have been a different tournament. But yeah, we saw Classic do this, and it looks like we are only making 2 carries. Yep, and now we're transitioning into Ground Toss. So it looks like Trigger, he's going for some mind games right now. He's revealing his hand, he's trying to force a certain reaction, and then he just tech switch very hard into something else. It's a big investment, of course, so there's so much riding on this tech switch, but Serral, he scouts. Oh my god, Serral dips in, he sees the gateway explosion, he sees that there are no more carriers in production, there are only 2, he knows exactly what's going on, and there are plenty of Queens to deal with this. The Queens, the transfuses keep everything alive. And the carriers, they're gonna get some Lings, they may get a Queen, up, not quite. Yeah, the transfuse keeps everything alive, and upon seeing that there are no more carriers, Serral doesn't make Corruptors, he goes for Mutas instead. So a great use of his tech, a great way to make use of the Spire, and still take advantage of what Trigger is doing. So again, really nice play so far here out of Serral, just on point, scouting and responding to what Trigger is doing. Having the foresight to go in for a secondary scout after seeing the initial carriers, as Trigger is working on Blink Stalkers and on Storm. You have the 4th base on the way, yes, of course. Blink isn't done yet, but it's going to finish in a couple of seconds. Before that happens, though, there is that window where these mutas can get out of control, and we're not committing into mutas this time. You can see that Serral is making roaches behind this. He is not going mass muta, and already 6 probes are going to be going down. A lot of damage is done. Oh my god, 10 workers, 11, 12. The Stalkers are able to keep up at least a little bit at that natural base. With the mutas, they rotate over towards the third, looking for even more damage. And as a reminder, behind this, Serral is making nothing but roaches. He's getting his ground army ready as the mutas keep these Stalkers busy. And Serral is getting ready to push into that forward base, into that fourth base. He's already there. Archon goes down. The carriers were left behind, thankfully. We do have some carriers to hold the line and to hold that base. But damage was still done. A trigger down to 50 workers. Oh, and you know what? We made a bunch of queens earlier, so why not make them a part of the army? Why not bring them to the front lines to help deal with these carriers? The roaches are powering on through. We do have the overcharge, but it was used a little bit prematurely, and the mutas, they dive on top of the carriers. The overcharge is putting in a lot of work, is keeping those carriers alive a little bit longer, but alas, it runs out. The shield battery goes down. The fourth base is going to get shut down as well. And Serral has too much. He's getting out of control. Trigger plummeting in supply. Does keep one carrier alive, but he doesn't keep the base alive. And the roaches, they keep on pushing. The wall is not a wall. They can just waltz straight into the main base. Ay, ay, ay. And again, I love the idea of what Trigger was doing. Again, he was trying to force a reaction, trying to force an overcommitment to defend against carriers and hard switch into ground toss. But Serral, he saw it coming a mile away. He did see it coming, and yeah, with that, Serral, he's just maxing out here on Roach Ravager. Getting ready for his push. And the cannons are going to be falling. Trigger doing whatever he can to hold on here, to hold fast. Blinking his heart out, but there are no shield batteries, no cannons, no overcharge. Without static defense, he's going to have a hard time holding onto this third base. Meanwhile, Serral, he's mass expanding. He's taking his 5th and his 6th hatchery. The third base goes down. Serral in full control. GG gets called, and Serral will take the series 2-0, continuing his just flawless record. GG. GG, well played. Again, just a masterclass of ZvP on display here from Serral. I say that, just a masterclass of scouting, right? And that's a big part of ZvP. I think I said ZvZ earlier. But that's a big part of Zerg versus Protoss, is scouting, recognizing what the Protoss is up to, reacting and responding. And yeah, Serral was able to just showcase that beautifully here against Trigger. My condolences to Trigger. Again, he's had a really rough group so far. And going up against Serral, I mean, no one is favored. No one is, except for maybe Solar. But no one is favored against Serral, and it was going to be an uphill battle nonetheless. Trigger is going to have to step away for now. This won't be the last time we cast him, though. He has a 1 best-of-3 left. With this loss, Trigger, he cannot make it out of the group. He will not make it out of Group A, but he can influence the group in other ways, as we're going to be seeing him later on versus Showtime. Meanwhile, we're heading over to the land of the Americas for our next series, for our next TVP between Showtime and Maru. See you soon. See you after the break.